realized working at the mental health retreat that I work at and my one-on-one work is that depression can be extremely environmental. It can be also related to the people we have in our lives and very much connected to our upbringing and what coping mechanisms we learnt around self-expression. It's very much also connected to our boundaries. And Gabor Mate, I'm often sharing information about his work because of his quote here as well. Having to push down your emotions to stay connected to your parents is a coping mechanism. This quote was connected to when he was describing why do we become depressed? And his firm belief is around suppressing and repression. So suppressing is generally, you'll know you're suppressing something when you're about to cry and you kind of distract yourself from doing it. That's suppression. Repression is more around, I didn't even know I had that fear there, or I didn't even know I had that emotion there. And it's coming up as a feeling or a memory. It's kind of like shocked us and it's like, oh, I didn't even know that existed. That's more repression. So we'll keep going. Now, every session I've been talking about polyvagal theory, and it's around Deb Dana's work. Polyvagal theory is around how our autonomic nervous system, so the part of us that responds to the world automatically from a human biological perspective, so very much connected to animals. This is very much connected to our nervous system and how we respond to stress. Now, at the top, we have the rest and digest, and there's all the different things that we can be at the top. You can see that there and read through them. Social, engaged, connected, mindful. It's where we all want to be. Then we have fight and flight, which we spoke about last week. And then at the bottom is where depression lives. So that's our shutdown, freeze, and fawn response. Depression lives down there because when we're feeling depressed, we've probably been in a fight flight for a while. Maybe when we were younger, we've been in that. Nothing worked, so then we shut down. Also, if we suppress our needs, our boundaries, we can also go into a depressive state as well. So that's where we're going to focus on today, is the shutdown, freeze, and fawn response. So what happens when we're depressed? Why can we get stuck in this state? Depression is when we feel that heaviness in our body. It's a freeze and shutdown. So freeze is I probably could have that at the bottom. Freeze is generally our last resort as humans, as animals too. Animals go into fight flight first. So deers, say they run from the predator. And then what happens is when they've become exhausted or there's no other option, they can, I'm not sure if deers do this, but animals do this in general, but they can play dead or shut down just to act like they're really small. So some animals just like stand really still. So there's this kind of it's like the last survival mechanism that we have as humans in our biology. So innately speaking, this is what happens to our nervous system. The freeze response is the last resort. We can go into freeze. You will know you're in freeze where you physically cannot move your body. You feel like a brick, like you feel like you're just this heavy thing that can't move. That's a freeze response. People who have had severe trauma, and especially around sexual trauma, can go into freeze often. Then we've got the fawn response. The fawn response would be higher up. So it's generally when we don't realize we're doing the fawn response. It's when we're people pleasing, and sometimes we don't realize we're doing it until afterwards, when we feel this resentment or we feel this ickiness, this annoyance around what we did when we said yes, but maybe we meant no. It can be when someone's pulling away from us and doesn't want to speak to us, say they're looking away, and the fawn response will come in where you're like, oh, I've done something wrong. I've done something wrong. There's something wrong with me. I've got to go reconnect with them and fix the situation. So that's also the fawn response coming in. the fear of abandonment and being pushed away. And then the shutdown is sometimes it can be a bit more subtle. Shutdown and freeze are probably similar, but shutdown's also a fawn response, because what shutdown does is we numb ourselves. So our autonomic nervous system protects us by numbing out. So that's a shutdown response. Ella's making a bit of noise behind me here. What do we feel in our body when we're depressed? So we can feel helpless, shame, hopeless, powerless, weak, despair, and sadness. Often we're not fully aware of these feelings, and what we really feel is this heavy, sad, or like we kind of just feel this heaviness, like we can't move or feel motivated to get out and sort of do things. So I'll say at the end where we can like sort of become more aware of our depressive states, but sometimes it can be really subtle as well. So I always look at these things on a scale. Okay, so more, I'm going to give you more examples of what it feels like, what depression sort of manifests as in everyday life. So it's hard to get out of bed, feeling stuck in life. So it's kind of like sometimes also feeling like your Groundhog Day. You just have to get out of bed, do the same thing, and you're just feeling really heavy and unmotivated. Feeling like you've got no choice. You've just got to do it. You've got no choice. You're stuck. This is the way it is. Feeling exhausted. Oh, that must have been a typo. Low mood, procrastination. So it's interesting because we think procrastination, we have more choice around it, but procrastination is actually a fear response, and it's a shutdown. So it's a way for us to protect ourselves with so that thing that we want to do, there's something that we're fearing in it, and our protector comes in and is like, no, we're not doing it. But procrastination, just we're not sure why we do it. Often we're like, why am I procrastinating? I just need to get this thing done, but I'm not motivated to do it. Or maybe I was really excited to do it at first and then I lost motivation. Or maybe I didn't want to do it at all and I still don't have motivation. So there's different ways to look at procrastination as well. Low in confidence. Often when we are feeling depressed, we're feeling our most vulnerable, younger self, and it's generally our little self when we're young, and we have low confidence in that space. We don't feel very confident to go out into the world and do the things that we want to do. We want to hide from people. You feel, you know this when you don't have capacity to go out and be social, and you don't feel motivated to do that. You feel uninspired. Avoid hard conversations, so that can be scary, so we shut down a little bit there. This is a place we use coping mechanisms to lift us back up the ladder, which I showed you at the start. Often we want to get ourselves out of this state because it feels sad, hopeless, powerless. It's not something that we really want to be in. So this is where coping mechanisms can come in and try to get us out of that state. And what we want to do is, healthy coping mechanisms can be great to get us out of that state, but we also want to know what gets us in that state in the first place. These different states are healthy as a signal to tell you something's happening. It's just that we get stuck in them because we're not sure how we got there in the first place, or we start to believe our thinking that is connected to this state. So our thinking becomes really negative when we feel depressed, which is not helpful because it keeps us in that state if we believe it. So often the thoughts around what's the point, that's when I know someone is in a really low state, when they say that statement, what's the point? I have no choice. So there's another typo there, sorry about that. I have no choice is that stuck feeling. So anytime you're like, I have to do it, I have no choice, you know that you're in this subtle depressive state. You're in a bit of a shutdown around it. They are better than me. So often when we are feeling depressed, we're not generally blaming out. When we're blaming out and we're angry at someone else, we're more in fight flight. when we're shut down and feeling depressed, we're more making it about ourselves. I shouldn't have said that. I should be able to do that thing. Why can't I never get it right? I always mess up. It never works out for me. So it's really this heavy self-pity that we have. We all have this too, by the way. Like, this is something that we all go through. What I like to do with my clients is, when I hear this, I hear it as a signal. So I'm like, when you are coming from that place, that's your shutdown speaking. Because there's a part of us that's often wiser, knows that those things aren't true, more confident. And then there's a part of us that can come in and be like, oh, you never get it right anyway, and can be really hard on ourselves. So to be able to understand these different parts can give you an idea of when your nervous system is in shutdown. You can use this language as signals to understand that. So what activates our depression? So generally it is the biggest thing that activates it is that we reinforce our belief systems around it. So because the depressive state causes us to think a certain way, and we can believe that and catch on to those stories, then we reinforce that. It's self-fulfilling prophecy in that. So the limiting beliefs that come up there, if we say, oh yeah, I should have done that, and we blame ourselves and internalize things, that's generally what activates it to continue into more of a shutdown. Fawning activates a depressive state if we fawn and self-abandon. So self-abandon, what it means is to suppress our needs, values, and emotions. So often we'll do that to keep the peace. We will do that to sometimes we know that the person we're speaking to is unsafe, so they're not going to hear us. They're not going to care for us if we express a need or value or our emotions. They might be in survival mode themselves. So we often do this to really protect ourselves. That's what keeps us activated in a depressive state, because if I'm suppressing myself, then I'm not meeting my needs. So I'm not able to lift myself out of this state. So we do this in a really unconscious way as well. When we're in the shutdown, it's probably the most like unconscious space that we're in, because we're shut down. I can say to someone, what's happening for you right now, when they're in shutdown, and they're like, I don't know. I don't know what's happening. I'm numb. I don't know how I feel. I don't know is a good indicator too that my brain is shutting down too. Confusion, fogginess. It's this, oh, I don't know. I don't even know what's happening. Okay, how do we reduce this? How do we get back up the ladder? So it's generally, as I said, it's just understanding yourself. How do you feel? How do you think in those spaces? What, how do you know you're depressed? Because often we can be in that space and not even know that it's happening. And I've gone through some ways for you to start to understand that. Also, what support do you need when you're in that place? But what could help you come out of it? Often I call a friend, or I go walking. I organize something fun to do to get me out of that state. So what are your specific tools to get you out of that state? So to start to create your own tools to come back up the ladder. What we really want is to no longer suppress. That's the biggest thing. Often depression comes from being highly criticized when you're young, or dismissed. And so we then suppress our feelings, we suppress ourselves. So then we fall into a depression. Yes. So becoming more aware of like when you might go with the flow, and then realize afterwards, oh, wait a minute, I didn't want to do that in the first place, and start to understand that part. So as I said, practice the opposite of suppression and numbing out. This can be scary because the very thing that protected us when we were young is the very thing that we need to move towards. So that's why I always recommend working with a therapist if it's something hard for you to do, and to start identifying what are my needs. Often if we have depression, we've been suppressing ourselves for so long that we're not even sure what our needs are. And so to understand our needs and values. So values are what is important to me in life, and our needs are what helps me feel balanced and healthy in life. Understand your emotions and your expression, and needs, values, and boundaries. Boundaries is a very big one for if you feel depressed, because often not expressing boundaries comes from a place of such a deep fear response in the body, where I've actually worked with someone that even at me speaking to them and saying, so would you be able to express your boundary, that put them in a fear response. So, and that it was an autonomic response too. So even the thought of expressing a boundary can be fearful for people. So it means that you've been conditioned so deeply to not express yourself because it's scary, and you've been shut down, dismissed, pushed away, or punished for it, that your body has then gone, nope, it's put a protector in there saying expressing my boundaries is not safe and I will not do it. So then practicing this with a therapist, this is why it helps to practice with a therapist. Follow the glimmers. So glimmers are when we are depressed, you will always have a part of your brain that comes in and a thought that comes in where it says, maybe it would be a good idea to get out of bed and go stand on the grass, or take the dogs for a walk, or go for a swim, or whatever your brain says. It will have a glimmer of movement. You want to take that glimmer. That glimmer is your growth part that wants to come back up the ladder. And so that is, if you take that glimmer, then you'll find yourself coming back up the ladder. Our body naturally wants to heal and evolve and grow. So anytime you get a glimmer in shutdown or when you feel depressed, take that glimmer and see where it takes you. It will often bring you back up the ladder. When you come back up the ladder, you may find that you get angry first before you hit a more calmer state. So generally we have to, I'll just go back to it, we have to pass through the ladder to get to the top. So how this is the ladder. So to get back up to the top, you may feel agitated. That is a good thing, because it means you're coming back up the ladder. You can express that agitation out, whether you go for a run if you're ready to do that, or whether you cry, or I don't know what it is that you might want to do. But it's a good thing when you're feeling from down here where you feel depressed to up here feeling angry. I used to, when I was working at the retreat, I would be happy for someone that was coming out into this state where they were getting angry, because I would say, good, now you're hitting more fight flight. It means you're coming up the ladder. So it was exciting to see that. So I just... Again, just some check-ins, and I can send these to you as well if you'd like. Just send me an email. What can I do? So what you can do once you start tuning into yourself when you're in this activation, you can ask yourself, what is my thinking like? I am feeling down, you can say, just to identify it. Breathe, check into your body. How do I feel? What sensations do I feel? What emotions do I feel? What happens when I move my body and shake or sway? So when we're in this depressive state, the body, when it's in fear, wants to stay small and kind of like, that's why we don't get motivated. What it needs is a little bit of movement, whether it's kind of swaying, whether it's, if you may even see kids rock, people rock when they're feeling like dysregulated. So that rocking is actually a way of the body trying to self-regulate. Any type of movement is really good when you're feeling a shutdown. And then as you come out of that shutdown, or that depressive state, then you can start to increase your movement. I wouldn't suggest kind of going for a hardcore run if you're feeling depressed. What I would suggest is like light walking, feeling to your body, and then maybe after that, your body would be ready for more excessive exercise. Sometimes there's a part of us that wants to be like, let's just go really hard to get out of it, but the body kind of isn't quite ready for it, and that's when we can get injured. And then calling someone for support. We're humans that need other humans in our lives that feel safe. So I think this is really important. The last resort would be, not the last, but one option would be Lifeline, because if no one else is awake, you're awake at night and you're feeling really depressed, and maybe you're at the bottom, right? You're having suicidal ideation. Lifeline is actually really good to call because they're trained in that sort of thing. Let's say you're not as far as that, but you just need a friend to talk to. So that's where there's a scale, right? We can be absolutely really down, where we might need to talk to someone about it in that space, or we can just feel really heavy and unmotivated and just need some reassurance or support from someone. So I encourage having a friend or someone you can call that would be that sort of nurturing person for you. So common tools, a lot of these things are slower things, so slow movement, then increasing the movement, yoga, breathing, nature, pets, speak to a supportive friend or family member, speak to a therapist, call Lifeline, or create a plan. So yeah, at the end, I've got create a plan during these times. So obviously you would do that when you're feeling more up the top of the ladder, to have a plan. Often I've got go-tos when I'm feeling certain ways, and this is even as a therapist. So I get activated, I become depressed. Like these things, many people everyone in the world gets activated in these states, because this is our natural biological fear response. So we all become activated. It's how we manage it, and it's how we respond to the activation. What happens is our belief systems, our trauma, our wounding, it shades the way that we respond to it. So if I've got like a negative belief system around I'm not good enough, then if I'm in a depressive state, I may just reinforce that negative belief system over and over again on a subconscious level. I don't even know I'm doing it, but the behaviors that I'm expressing or creating around it is causing me to reinforce that belief system. But maybe if I'm someone that didn't grow up with that belief system of not being good enough, I get myself out of that depressive state by investing money in myself to go do something that's soothing, that's self-loving, self-caring, and healthier. So there's just different ways that we can respond to it. And I don't believe those negative thoughts that maybe come up, because I know they're not true. I'm further away from them. So that's that's why it can be a bit different. As that sort of explains why it's hard to support ourselves. It's our thinking, the way that we think in those spaces, they can really cycle. Often a lot of my work is to become the observer of our thoughts and not attached to them. What meditation is exactly that. When we are meditating, it's not that we don't have thoughts, it's that we don't attach to the thoughts that come up, and we let them go so they can come up and go. It's like they flow, kind of flow away, and we can just say, oh, that's an interesting thought, rather than, oh, I shouldn't have said that thing, and then go down this little storyline of why you shouldn't have said a certain thing to someone and how you're stupid and you can't believe you said that. And then we can ruminate on it, and that's when we get caught in that causes us to stay in that depressive state too. Sometimes it's just a physiological response and it's a repressed thing. Often when you don't have many thoughts around it, it'll be more repressed, and it's somatic. That's where somatic work comes in, which is around exploring different sensory systems in the body. So whether it's movement, imagery that come up, memories that might come up, thought processes. Well, I said thoughts might not come up, but it would be another way of accessing that information, because talk therapy alone won't get you there. That's when you know it's more repressed. So you don't even know it's there. Okay, time for questions and coaching.